Welcome to the Divorce Dad Playbook podcast. I'm Dan Levy.
And I'm Scott Levy.
Got a new song for you, pepping it up a little bit. This song is important, Scott. We have a guest today, Nicole Ananda, who is a sex therapist. Yes.
Good music. I love when you surprise me with the theme songs, too. It's great.
We're going to talk about sex. She is wonderful. And so she and I spoke earlier. We're going to slice that in the middle of this conversation with us. So again, if you we'll put it all over the screen for people who watch on YouTube, but for people who don't, if you want to see who she is before you listen to her, and she is incredible, and you will love this conversation, I promise you. It's AnandaIntegrativeHealing.com. Check it out. She is dynamic. And there are a lot of things that I've learned from her over the months that we have been friends and now, I guess, colleagues in a way. So that's what we're going to go in a little bit. It's going to be an interesting conversation. I do want to touch on something that you and I were talking about the other day. I don't have COVID. So that's good. I was a little
Very
nervous.
good. I was nervous for you.
Yeah, I mean, I might have something else, but at least I don't have COVID.
Well, that's not what we're talking about today.
By the way, thanks for dressing up. It's nice that you put a fleece zip up on top of your pajamas, because I'm assuming you're in pajamas if you're like in your bed. Again, most of the people are going to be listening to this, and I love that because I always preferred radio to TV. But since we're doing this on video, and you can go to our site, divorcedadplaybook.com for people who just get the show. You can go to our YouTube. I mean, you used to be the slickest guy I know. And now you're like not even doing your hair.
Well, thank you for that compliment. I'll stop you at the compliment. Well, I appreciate you noticing that I'm full on remote COVID look. I think my hair looks pretty good for an old dude. At least I got a lot of hair on there. It's pretty nice. And you know what? Just for you, Dan, I'll make sure that I step up my game on the next podcast. For all of you that are watching, you'll be really surprised at how much I can mess up. I am basically wearing my pajamas at this point. But you know what? It's the beauty of doing a podcast from your home.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, I'm in sweatpants. Like, I mean, sweatpants, and they're always rolled up because I have nice calves. But I have excellent calves.
How can you make fun of what I'm wearing when you just stood up and wore rolled up sweatpants?
Because I'm wearing a nice shirt. It's a very nice shirt. By the way, can I say
you honestly are like no, hold on. You're like a newscaster who they're sitting there in like a suit and tie, but they have no pants on underneath the desk.
100%. They all do. I'm friends with a lot of sportscasters. None of them wear pants.
Yeah, so they're all wearing at least I'm wearing pants.
I'm wearing pants. They're sweatpants. They're just rolled up a little bit.
Who's looking at your nice calves? Do you have somebody there that's looking at your nice calves right now?
No, right now it's just more comfortable. I roll my pants up everywhere I go. I do not have pants that go down to my ankles anymore. Go down to like the floor. Every pair of pants I have, I roll up to sub knee. I wear capri pants essentially because I think if you wear shorts out in public, you're like a 12-year-old, and yet it's hot, and so I roll up my pants again. It works.
You're forging your own fashion statement and style.
I don't think it's just me. I mean, if
you're wearing capri pants, I don't see anyone wearing capri pants. But look, I'm in New York, dude. New York, there are a ton of dudes wearing capri pants in New York. But I used to remember mom used to wear capri pants all the time.
They're first of all very comfortable. Second of all, have I ever not been one to try to stand out and have my own style?
No, you absolutely have. And I'll say to get us out of this is my it's feeling like fall, nice orange sweatshirt that I'm just, really comfy in. And
okay, this is my lucky shirt that I have run out of luck with. And that is something that we're going to talk about on the other side of the interview with Nicole. So we'll get to that.
Gotcha.
I will allow you. I think people need to start to enjoy as they listen to more of these, that I am providing you ways to call me an idiot. It's not like you're just calling me an idiot. Like, I'm setting you up for the dunk here. I should be getting triple double assists and rebounds and stuff.
False. It's false. By the way, you may think that you're doing that, but you don't actually. So if you think you're trying hard to set me up to give me a layup to calling you an idiot, you can just stop, because the reality is you're most of the time you are an idiot, and I don't have to try that hard to get to the idiot part of you. So
okay, before that, so I will say, and it's fine. I am who I am. If you think I'm an idiot, that, you know, I love, but I'm serious. To be serious, because we always joke around and then get back serious. I appreciate that, because I think everyone needs to be held in check. And I think for many years, I was married for 17 years or almost 20 years. We were together, and I was held in check by my wife. I don't have that anymore. The only people I see are a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. So I act like a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. I mean, so to have you and to have listeners who email in and people who send us notes and whatnot to keep us in check, to keep me in check, is, I think, important. Especially as I now have 2 sessions left with my therapist. And that is, I feel like in 2 weeks, I'm going to be divorced twice. So that I'm not looking forward to spin this to something else. Again, and by the way, I think if I do sound like an idiot, it's all for show. It is just to get people to laugh, because I'm an entertainer at heart. But in the interview that we do, I don't think I sound like an idiot. I think this interview is amazing. I love it.
But by the way, just let me classify really fast.
Sure.
You're a brilliant guy, actually. So when I say idiot, I just want all the people who are listening to understand what I mean by an idiot, because I don't want to sound condescending in that sense. Like, you are actually one of the smartest people I know. Mm-hmm. You just act like a moron sometimes. Like, you do things, and understandably, like, this is part of your mental state and all these other things. And you're new into this, certainly very new compared to me, into this whole single divorced dad world and dating and everything else. So by the way, it's highly relatable. I know, I see all the, comments and emails, coming to you as opposed to me, that you're very relatable to a lot of people, because you're talking about the things that you're doing, and you're showing a lot of the things that you're doing, and everyone else can really relate to that. To me,
the rolled up pants, is that what you meant by showing people what I'm doing?
No, I mean over time, when you talk about the things you're doing, right? Exactly.
Let me just do this again.
No. Nobody wants, dude.
Look at the
it's
muscle
fantastic,
tone on that.
right? It's really fantastic. You're like ghostly pale. It's all good. So what I'm talking about more so is that I am clearly at a point way beyond where you are. So when I call you an idiot, it's more of like a term of endearment for me, that I'm making sure people recognize that the things you are doing are ridiculous. But also, it's a process that you need to go through, and it's a process that everyone needs to go through, and I can appreciate it. So I just want to make it clear, like, I don't really think you're an idiot. I use that word in the most endearing way to say, like,
I am an avatar.
Lovingly, you're like a moron.
I'm not a big blue monster, but I am an avatar for our audience. And that's sort of the dynamic that we realized might connect with people, is I'm the idiot who hasn't done all this, and you're the geezer who's Sonny back in, been there, done that. I mean, that's our dynamic. Okay.
So quickly, if I call you an idiot and you call me a geezer, we're good.
We've belabored a little longer than I expected, so I want to get to the interview quick. But
yes.
Well, one thing, last episode, I believe it was last episode, we talked about COVID and obviously mentioned that you had it and sort of how you deal with this. This is COVID adjacent, and I mean that because I want to ask you this specific question. For people, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show yet, but it is a very big part of my life. So if anyone has Googled me and looked at all the stuff that has related to me, my son, Max, who's 10, has hemophilia. It's a very rare and very serious bleeding disorder. And the medication he's on now is magic. He went from 3 IV infusions a week that he used to get in a port, which is how he became Iron Max. Do Iron Max NBC if people want to learn about him. And you'll find a great video that they did on the NBC Nightly News about us. After he got the port taken out, I actually had to give him intravenous treatments 3 times a week in his arm or in his hand and think about that. Like you're at home in the kitchen and you're sticking a needle in your kid. Now it's one subcutaneous shot every 2 weeks. It is magic compared to what we had to go through. However, when he gets a bleed, when he gets an injury, he still needs to be treated. And that's what happened this week, where he fell at home, not with me at the house, with my ex, didn't tell her. And then later that day, he said his wrist hurt. The next morning he woke up, he said it hurt. I had him. I looked at it. I diagnosed it. It's a sprain. He sprained his wrist. That is not necessarily a bleed. He's had that before. He's in pain, but it's not necessarily a bleed. The next day, his pain increased. Now that's a warning sign. It might be something. My ex decided to take him to the doctor. They treated him. He feels better. So there obviously was some sort of bleed in there. She said to me in the back and forth where I said, just give me a heads up before you call the doctor that you're taking him. Don't tell me that you have an appointment at 11 o'clock. I want to be part of that conversation. And her response on text, Scott, was, well, I thought you would have taken it more seriously yesterday. And I flipped out on text. And I said, please never again in the history of time accuse me of not taking something with his health and safety seriously. I was appalled. I understand she's upset that maybe we could have handled this a day before, but I did the assessment. I am the one who takes him to the hospital. I am the one who picks him up at school when he's hurt and takes him to the doctor. She happened to have him that day, and yet she made the decision on her own and then threw it on me like I was being an irresponsible parent. And so that's the question I have for you is, how do we deal with when one parent has the kids, they become the one in charge and can throw that kind of shade on someone?
Yeah. Well, look, that's tough. And what I would say is that really never ends. Unfortunately, you just got to get to a point where A, you're okay with it, and B, the communication picks up. And I say it never ends because honestly, I don't have a child with hemophilia, but I do have an ex and I have 2 kids, and a similar type of conversation happened this week where my ex was, to use your reference, like throwing some shade on me about something that was happening with my younger son in school. And you know what, like that just doesn't end. Like there will be times that as a single parent, you will feel the absolute burden of taking care of those kids on your own. And you're not on your own. You actually still have a partner, whether you like each other or hate each other or somewhere in between, you still have a partner to parent with. And right. When you're new in this, which you are, or even when you've been in this situation for a long time, you still forget that sometimes. And you almost like, again, I talk about this different times where it's like the pendulum, where you're all the way to the right at one point, and then you swing all the way to the left to take, like you were co-parenting together in the same house and everything, all the way up here to the right. And then you are a single parent all the way to the left. And you got to start to get somewhere in the middle where you respect each other as parents of your kids, and you can give the heads up, and you can not play the blame game and stuff like that. Yeah. But it still happens, Dan. And you know what? It happens every day. It's been happening to me for 8 years, and I don't blame my ex necessarily for it, because I'm sure I do it too, and I'm sure you do it too.
Oh yeah.
But it hurts, right? It hurts, and it feels crappy when you know you're a good dad, and you are a great dad, but it still feels bad when the relationship that you have with your ex is mostly about the kids at this point. And when they seemingly call you a bad dad, it hurts. And that's part of the reality of that relationship now, is that they're going to try and make you feel bad. And I feel bad sometimes too. So you're not alone in this. And I'm sure everyone that listens, you feel that sensation sometimes, and it pisses you off. But the reality is, it's just something you got to start to figure out how to deal with and not react like you did. And I know that's hard not to do.
No. So it was over text, and I was upset by myself. The text was pretty matter of fact, and it wasn't it was, please never do that again. That is not fair. Afterwards, when I got an update of how he was and that they did decide to treat him, I sent a separate text after the information. I said, thank you for taking him. Because I mean, usually as I am the person who usually takes him, she had him, she took the initiative, and she took him. Yeah. And it was the right decision. Great. And I agree with the decision. Yep. I just wish I was a part of it at the beginning. Then Max was going to try and ride his bike to school yesterday, and I was there to drive him. I go over to the house, pick the kids up, and drive them to school one day a week. Yeah. And I thought to myself, you have like a brace on your hand. You're like wearing a cast. Like, who said you could ride your bike to school? Like, but I was like, you know what? I'm not going to turn that into a fight. I'm not going to go there. It doesn't matter. And I feel like that's the first time that I've done that. Let's just let it go and live another day. And usually I am not that person. So I think maybe it's you or this show or just the idea of being able to process it in a different way has afforded me that opportunity. All right, let's lighten it up. I don't know if you want to. We should just have music under us the whole time. YouTube would be not fans of that. I think we'd be kicked off YouTube.
We'd be kicked off. Yes, very fast, especially the songs you pick.
What?
I'm saying we can't.
I know,
we don't have the rights to the song, so it's like
we definitely don't. This is the karaoke version, though, so it's not even like all the big lyrics. It's just this is the. We're going to talk about sex. You and I will be back on the other side.
Perfect.
The great thing about doing a radio show and a podcast is that you get to talk to all of your friends. The great thing about doing this podcast is that you get to talk to the people you've matched with on dating profiles. And so I'm happy to introduce one of the first people I ever actually matched with, Nicole Ananda. Oh my God, I screwed that up. Can I just start over? Because it's embarrassing. No, we'll keep rolling. I like to. Nicole Ananda, so for people who don't know, which maybe most of our audience right now, you are not just a divorced mother. You are also my shaman. You are like my spiritual guide, correct?
I didn't realize that. I guess so.
You totally realized it. We talked about this a couple weeks ago where I come to you with existential crises and you solve them for me.
Yeah, I guess I kind of thought of myself as your life coach, but
I don't know the difference. And I'm not even being flippant about it. Like, what do you do? Let's just, why don't you give me the elevator on what you do professionally? Because I think it's very, very interesting to all of the people who are listening.
Okay. So I do kind of a range of things, and I have a clinical practice based around surrogate partner therapy, which is an experiential modality of sex therapy. Basically, we have people come to us with different sexual dysfunctions or issues or intimacy problems, relationship problems, and we have them work in what's called a triadic model with a clinical therapist and a surrogate partner and the client, and that makes the triad. And so the clinical therapist helps them process their experiences, and the surrogate partner gives them actual real-life relational experiences to help work through their issues. So that is the main work that I do, I guess, to support myself. But then the work that is my calling is shamanic healing and energy work. And so I do that on a donation basis, actually. Anybody who needs any type of spiritual healing or shamanic healing. I also am trained in ritual abuse and deprogramming. So I work with people who have had extreme trauma and ritual abuse. And for those people who, I don't know how they find me, the right people always just find me. They just come to me looking for some, with, I guess, the existential crises or kind of big spiritual problems or some kind of dark night of the soul. And I do a different type of work with them, which is more, so the surrogate partner therapy is interactive, and the shamanic work is more like for them receptive. They just kind of receive the healing.
Okay. I want to ask specifically with relation to some of the people who are listening, and I want to stress this with people all the time who are listening to the show. The site is called the Divorced Dad Playbook, but it is so much more than just divorced dads. It's single dads, it's divorced women, it's obviously divorced moms. It's really everyone. So I wanted to ask you, how many of your clients in either of those disciplines, how many of your clients come to fix themselves, and how many come to fix their relationships?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd say they all come to fix themselves. They're all there to fix themselves, and a lot of them don't have relationships. So on the surrogate partner therapy side, a lot of them are not in relationships and haven't been for a long time, or have given up on love or relationship, or have had so many negative or traumatic experiences that they're afraid to put themselves out there. And what they need is to have a, kind of a healing, loving unconditionally accepting experience to learn to love themselves again and have enough confidence to go out and feel like they can face dating. But I do get a, were you going to ask a question?
No, I was just sorry to cut you off, but that's where you and I connected. I feel that when I first started talking to you about what you did, I said to you, like, I shouldn't date you. I should hire you, because I had been married for 17 years and I all of a sudden was thrust out into this world that I had no idea what was going on. I'd never been online dating. I had never really gone on an adult date, I feel like. And so what do you do in those situations? And I was terrified. I even put that in my profile at the beginning. I said, I've been single for the first time in 20 years and terrified. And actually it worked, which is funny because I think people gravitated toward that, but it was the truth. And I came to you and asked, like, sort of how I understand if I'm in a somewhat clinical scenario, I talk to a therapist every week and I can process things with her that I can't necessarily process. It took me years to be able to process those things on my own in real time. Mm-hmm. But with sexual anxiety and all of the other issues that go along with that, how do some of your clients deal with that? Like, it might be productive and they feel a sense of self when they're with you, but what happens when they're out in the real world? Like, how do you prepare them for that?
Well, that's a good segue, because to finish answering your first question, I'd say about a quarter of my clients are people like you who are either transitioning out of a long-term relationship or who are newly single and lost, and they don't really know how to relate to themselves and others. And there's a really big concept in surrogate partner therapy that we call generalizing, right? Which everything that we teach them, we want them to then learn how to generalize and use out in the world with other people, because we don't want them to associate that just with us and get kind of attached or think that that can only happen with us. And what really happens is we teach them to be like us. So we are kind of their teacher and we guide and lead them. And then we teach them how to take on that role when they go out to do their dating and relationships, because most people have not been in any way educated on how to do relationships, how to relate to other people. Most people are incredibly dysfunctional, and almost every family is dysfunctional. And so we grow up with these attachment patterns and relational patterns that are very maladaptive, and try to have relationships, and then they're, a nightmare and a shit show. And, yes, me too. I mean, I've learned through experience and also through studying this to do it for myself. And so we basically have to teach them how to go out and then teach others. So that's the way that we prepare them, because everything I do for them, I say, okay, now you're going to have to go and be the one who models consent, who models communication, who models being present and really like focusing, like dealing with all of the difficult issues. And so they learn how to do that with us and get enough confidence that they can go out and then kind of take that leadership role.
It's interesting because I feel on my own level that it wasn't until I realized how much damage other people have and how similar that felt to what I was going through, where I felt comfortable with people in like an intimate setting. I felt at the beginning it was more of a performance, like I had to be good. And it was like there's an expectation if someone comes home with you, or if you go on a third date, or whatever it is, that this is the time where that stuff happens. And it was just so much panic and anxiety. I know on your website that people come to you and excuse me, and you try to explain to them, and I read this like 3 or 4 times on your site, to get out of your own head and sort of live in your body.
Yes.
That's not, that's easier said than done. I've dealt with stuff, and I talk about this on the show all the time, but like last week I made a stupid decision. I got stood up, I got ghosted. I thought I need to get this out of my system, and I called somebody else, and it was horrible. And it made me fall into a hole for a week because I tried to force something that I was not emotionally or frankly even physically equipped to handle at that time.
Yeah, the better thing to do would have been to sit with those feelings of disappointment and rejection and process them so that they could move out and through. But
and call you is what I really should have done instead of calling
you probably should have done that.
Nevertheless, here we are.
Yeah, so embodiment is the foundation of the work that I do in surrogate partner therapy. Because most people are really just walking around like disembodied heads. They're just in their head all the time, thinking, with their minds running, making up stories. It's crazy. And it's when you're able to really drop down and integrate and feel your body and be in your body, every single experience you have can be an orgasmic experience. Eating, just sitting, showering. So we actually give as homework for people what's called Vipassana meditation, where it's a meditation by doing. And I'll have them a few times a week do a really mindful meal where they look at their food and smell it and feel the textures and really experience deeply. And also a mindful shower where they, instead of thinking about what they're going to do next, they listen to the sounds of the water and they feel the different sensations. We also teach people to move their consciousness and their reference point. So I'll tell them to feel your fingers as they touch your scalp when you're washing your hair, and then shift your awareness to feeling your scalp as your fingers are touching it. And it's the same action, but it's two different points of reference, and it teaches people to learn how to just shift their consciousness into their body in a more powerful way.
Funny you say with the fingers, because one of the coping mechanisms that I developed when I learned mindfulness for the first time was to do this, where you touch every finger. And what I learned is if you do it with one hand, it's pretty easy. But when you have to do it with both hands and you have to actually try to consistently do this while either talking to someone, it takes actually a decent amount of brain power, and you eliminate all of the other things that were getting your mind going crazy, because you're focusing literally on making sure that both fingers touch at the same time on either hand. I've been able to do it pretty well, but that was one of those weird sort of tricks that seems to be similar to what you're talking about.
Similar. We also do it in our sessions. We do touch exercises where we have people just focus on their own sensation, because the problem, like you've mentioned, is most people are in performance mode and not pleasure mode.
Right.
And I hate the word performance. I hate that whole concept. The point is to come together and feel connection and feel pleasure and play together, right? And have a fun, pleasurable, connected experience. And people get so caught up in what's going to happen next, right? Am I doing it right or wrong?
Yeah.
What is my dick going to do, right? Am I going to come? Are they going to come? And it takes all the connection away, because if I'm with you and you're in your head, you're not with me, you're not present with me, you're somewhere else. And so people are having these two separate experiences rather than.
And I've felt that too. It's interesting you say it like that, because there have been times where I have felt very connected to someone, and it almost feels like none of those issues come up at all. And afterwards you're kind of like, well, that was a relief, but it's the other way around, right? It's not that was a relief. It's because I'm connected to that person, everything worked out. The other people, maybe I'm trying to force a connection, or it's one of those things where you feel like that's what is supposed to happen and you force it. And that's when you get in your head, because you're not actually connected to the person, at least in my experience. And so I'll ask you this again. I feel like this is a very therapeutic thing for me. How do I stop doing that?
Well, one of the best ways to stop doing that is to slow down, right? Slow down, get off what we call, one of the people on my team calls the sexcalator, right? Where, you kind of start, and so many people have this kind of, it's great, right? Have this routine that they go through, and I do this and then that, and then this leads to this, and it becomes very mechanical. And if you can just let go of that and just get really present and feel your sensations in your body, look in the eyes of the person you're with, and just kind of be present with them and let yourself feel the flow of what should happen next rather than doing. So it's kind of dropping into a more, I wouldn't call it passive, more of a receptive state of being rather than an active state of doing. And then whatever intuitively is right between the two of you will start to emerge and will come together. And then you'll start to kind of almost act as one and just feel what should happen. And for me, I think, the way that our culture approaches sex and views sex, it's so incredibly physical and mechanical, and it's not spiritual. And in my best sexual experiences, it's a spiritual experience where I'm literally becoming one body and soul with another person. And that's the kind of sex I like best, regardless of what physically is happening and
Sure.
who's having orgasms or not, or how good someone's technique is or whatever, because technique is another stupid thing. There's no such thing, right? It's just tuning into the person you're with and feeling what works for them. But
Which is actually funny, and I don't want to get too much into it, but that's actually come up a couple times in my favor, I think I'll say, where people are like, I always ask the question, like, do people just have like a script, like that old Seinfeld episode where like they're looking on their hand to see like, what do I do next? Like, you have to understand what the other person is asking for physically to know what you're able or willing to give. And I do think it's difficult to get to that point, especially when you have all the anxieties and whatnot. So I want to speak about that. I have two more questions for you. One about the anxiety. And this is maybe just selfishly asking this, but what are your thoughts on medication, on antidepressants, anti-anxiety? Because a lot of what you do, it sounds to be not necessarily the opposite of that, but I would imagine a supplement to that or a way to maybe back off from that. And that's what I hope to do, is eventually like get off of some of the medication because I'm doing more of the things that you're teaching.
yes, I'm glad you asked that. And my opinion on that might be slightly controversial, but I am really against medication in general for long-term and chronic use. I think sometimes medication is helpful in the short term when someone is in crisis. And sorry, can you hear that truck in the background? Okay.
We hear everything. It's fine.
Okay.
I started this out by like saying your name. I mean, this is like the most professional thing you've ever done, isn't it?
Wait, what is this podcast?
Yeah, we just no, but you know what's fun about that? And like most people, I said like let's start over. Most people would have just started over. I've done a million shows. They're like, oh, can we start? I did that on purpose because honestly, like this is life. Like sometimes you screw up. I've known you for what, 5 months, and the one time I have to say your last name when people are listening, I say it wrong. Like it's ridiculous, but it's life, and I don't want to fake it. So
Yes.
here we are.
Well,
The
yeah.
truck is there. Embrace the truck.
So there's the trash truck in the background. But so for me, in terms of medication, I do think, so I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor, so I would never tell somebody to be on or off medication because that would be unethical and irresponsible. But when it comes down to my personal opinion and the research that I've done, most psychotropic medications have an incredibly low efficacy rate. So if you're talking about something that has the same or lower efficacy as the placebo, then what are we talking about here? Probably
Right.
a lot of it is placebo, and we see that with most people who get on any kind of like, especially antidepressant medications. They work for a period of time and then they stop working because the placebo effect has worn off, and then they're constantly either upping the dose or
Correct.
switching the medications, and none of that is dealing with the root issue of what's causing the depression and anxiety. So all it is a Band-Aid with a ton of side effects, and a lot of them sexual side effects,
Exactly.
right? That are not really ever going to help you get better. The things that we teach are addressing the root causes of the problems and what's going on and helping you heal yourself so that you don't need that stuff. So I would never tell somebody don't go on medication, but what we often do at my work is we help people get off of it because we're giving them the tools and the foundation to be a healthy, integrated person so that they don't need the medication. And
No, I'm not smiling because of that. I'm smiling because that would be the best like tagline ever. We help you get off.
Yes, it's very
In any way you need to.
I love
Just
that.
my own personal thoughts on this, having gone through this, and I, maybe I'm doing this wrong, but I do mention it as you know, like I'm super honest about all this stuff and very open about my issues, both mentally, but then obviously the irony to me is how much you feel sexual side effects when you're dealing with anxiety medication and depression, because what is the most anxiety inducing thing? poor sexual performance. I know you hate that word. And then that leads to depression because, oh, that didn't work. So it's hilarious that the side effects of the medication that are supposed to be helping you are actually creating situations that put you in those mental states. And it's just a never ending cycle.
Yes. Yeah, one of the
One,
things I highly recommend for most people, which a lot of people don't like hearing that in our hookup culture, is wait until you really know someone and have a good connection before you have sex with them. Because then, however it goes, you have enough of a foundation of mutual understanding and care that it's not a big deal if it doesn't go exactly how you want it to. And you can kind of laugh it off together and keep working on it. Right? The places where you're getting
yeah.
these high stakes, I better do it right and make myself look good, or when we don't know somebody and we're trying to have some kind of porn-like experience. And if you're not able to really just let go and have it go however it goes and not care, it's probably not a good idea to do those things.
Well, it's funny because actually, and in some cases, I have been very clear about like, hey, you know what? Shit might not work right now because I'm on a lot of medication and I can't feel anything. And so sometimes that's worked in my favor because then it's just like, let's just mess around and have fun and see what happens. Other people, I think, and maybe that's more speaking to what you just said, feel like they did something wrong or they're like, well, you didn't finish or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care about that. Like, that's fine. I would rather do what we did for 20 minutes than do that for 3 minutes and then be done. Like that was a more enjoyable experience. And people have a hard time wrapping their head around that because they think it's like, let's just get to the end. The end is the best part. No one wants to see a fireworks show without the grand finale.
Yes. And a lot of the men I work with have had, what I wouldn't like what you called, what did you call it? Poor performance or something. I would call just negative sexual experiences, right? Because
Yeah.
they kind of had something go the way they didn't want it to go. And they've been shamed for it. Either their partner has taken it personally, like it meant something about them, or they weren't desirable, or you don't want me enough, or just kind of put them down for it. And that's so damaging. That will just shut somebody down.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we help them work through is just, hey, this happens and look, we're all fine, right? We can still have fun together. We can still enjoy ourselves. It's not all about you and what your dick's doing.
Right. And actually it's interesting because it took me talking with my therapist to realize that the reason I was on the medication that was causing those issues was because I pretty much thought I was going to die. And I was so anxious when I started dating again because I knew I couldn't feel anything. And I knew that I was going to have anxiety because I was only with somebody for, one person for 20 years or whatever. Once I got over myself and I realized I'm on the medication because of what was happening, I wouldn't be here without it. And so for now, at least for the next however long, while I need this, if it creates a little bit of sexual dysfunction for me, I wouldn't even be with this woman. I wouldn't even be with anyone. I wouldn't be here for my kids without that necessity. And I don't want to lean on the medication too much. But once I realized, like, you know what? I'm just should be happy I'm here. If it doesn't work out, oh, well, that's when I started to relax and I was able to sort of have a more enjoyable experience no matter what happened.
Yeah. And in that case, that's one of the cases where in crisis, medication can be really helpful and useful because it can help get you from a place of not functioning to being able to kind of pull yourself together and function. But I think that really, now there's some other.
Yeah. Was there recycling comes now?
It's like Grand Central Station here right now.
I once did an interview with Kenny Mayne from ESPN, and the entire interview, like a half hour, he was driving back and forth from his house to the dumpster, like the city dump or whatever. And he had to he's like, hold on a second. He's like throwing like a couch into a, yeah. And I'm like, this is great. It was like the best episode we ever had. So it's fun.
Oh,
this
good.
Awesome.
Well, this will be the second best then. But
well, he wasn't on this show. That was definitely a different topic, but nonetheless.
But I would really love to see medical doctors, psychiatrists really be trained in how to get people out of crisis using medication and then not rely on medication for the rest of their lives. And same thing in actually, any kind of medical situation. I mean, my father just found out that he's diabetic and he was pre-diabetic for a while and his doctor kept wanting to put him on medication. And he said, no, thanks. I'm just going to go home and eat better. And then he would, and he'd come back and then his numbers would be fine. Same thing happened with my ex-husband and cholesterol, and they said, we're going to put you on Lipitor for the rest of your life, and he was like, no, and just went and changed his life and his habits. And that should always be the first, unless you're in absolute crisis where you need that shot of insulin or you're going to die, or you need that medication like you did,
Right.
or else you might kill yourself or just fall apart. They really need to then learn how to transition people into, how do you live a healthy life and heal yourself and take care of yourself and heal those root issues. And I really think we need such an overhaul, and don't even get me started on, Viagra and all that stuff and the urologists, because that's nuts.
Next time you're on, we'll have that conversation. Yeah. I call it pills on pills on pills. If the pills I'm on don't allow me to feel anything, then the only way I've learned to solve it is another pill.
Yeah.
Which,
right. Exactly.
You know what? For now, like, it is what it is. My last question for you, and actually, I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while, because and so I'm glad we're doing this like while everyone else can listen. It's not just the two of us. I've really tried over the last month or two to not use mindfulness as a coping skill or as a defense mechanism, but to be more proactive and use that in the things I'm doing in my life. And I feel like I'm at a point now where I can appreciate some of the things, like you mentioned at the beginning with the shower or with eating. I am very into that. For me, it's sweeping the floor. If you sweep the floor with a broom, it is the most mindful exercise. If you hear the bristles hitting the floor, it's just amazing and calming. And there's other things I mentioned, the finger, like there's other ways to do that. Most of them were to cope. But now that I'm able to do this and to be more present, I feel like on a lot of these dates that I've gone on, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not checking Tinder or Bumble or whatever to see who else is. I'm present with the person I'm with. But what's happened is I get a very like swift yet definitive connection with these people because I feel like I'm so invested, and that has made these connections feel stronger quicker than maybe they are. And I'm not sure what to do there, because honestly, sometimes that lasts. Sometimes it's fire. And then the next day the woman's like, what the hell what just happened? I can't ever talk to you again. And I'm like, well, that's not great. I mean, I thought it was fun. She's like, yeah, it was fun, but that's not who I am. And my thought is like, maybe it is who you are. And so I've had difficulty with that because I feel very impulsive. The ADHD stuff we talked about, the H and the bipolar stuff. And I have some impulse control issues that has gotten me in a little bit of trouble where I feel the connection. So I'm like, I'm going with this. This is a strong connection. Is it fake? Am I convincing myself of that? Or is it the mindfulness of being present is just a different experience?
I think, well, first of all, that sweeping exercise you do is very Buddhist. I like that.
Oh, nice.
It's incredibly Buddhist to be able to get deeply present while sweeping. I would say it's the presence. So when you're able to, and for me, I've always been very embodied, and it's kind of, I guess, a gift that I was born with, and present and able to connect. And for me, I can connect like that with pretty much anyone, any person, a stranger. Within 5 minutes, I can connect so deeply and feel that oneness, because we really all, if you get down to the spiritual side of it, we are all one and we're all connected. And all of this is just energy and vibration. And there's no difference between you and me. When we're next to each other and you look at it in an atomic and quantum level, it's all just one, right? So you're tapping into this kind of quantum field of oneness and feeling what's real, which is that we are all really deeply connected. We just mostly are so caught up in the separateness and the 3D world that we don't feel that, and we're in our heads and we don't really acknowledge it. So when you're getting into that place of presence, I think that it's genuine, because for me, it feels genuine. I mean, I can have a human being in front of me I've never met before and just be like, I just love you.
Yeah.
And
that's honestly how the two of us started talking. It was like, we talked for like a couple of days. We've actually never been in the same room, which is hilarious.
No.
It was amazing that is the truth. But maybe the second time I talked to you, I was like, this woman's going to be my best friend for like 10 years, or like one of my best friends for a while, because there was that connection right away, whether it was, I didn't even care if it was physical. And usually you do care about that. You're like, oh, it didn't matter to me if we never do anything or always do it. It was just, there was something there. So I totally get that.
Yeah, and actually, it was like 7 or 8 months ago. So
Shut up.
we maintained it
What?
without ever meeting each other, this connection for that long. And it's interesting because for me, a lot of times when I match with someone on a dating site, I get this intuitive feeling, and it's not. And sometimes it's someone who I wouldn't normally pick, or I don't feel like is my type, but I just
Yeah.
feel like there's a reason I'm supposed to know this person. And I think you were one of those people.
I agree with that. And I'll ask you this on the show, so you have to say yes. Will you come back and will you do this again? You can be
Oh,
like the divorced dad, playbook shaman, Reiki healer.
absolutely. I thought you were going to ask me something that might be hard to say yes to.
Well, now I have to think of that for next
I
time.
know that. Will you come over here and, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
No,
On that note, thank you so much for doing this.
you're welcome. Thank you.
And again, AnandaIntegrativeHealing.com for people who are listening. It was all over the screen, so go watch because it's awesome. Scott, to bring you back in on this, just a heads up, after that interview, we discussed she and I are going to start a podcast. You're out. Just letting you know.
Cool. I appreciate you kicking me out of my own thing. That's awesome. I didn't know you had that kind of power.
I mean, we can start our own. It's a coup. You're out. She's
All right, it's
amazing,
a
and you're
coup.
out.
That's great. By the way, she was awesome, and I certainly would not be talking about the things that she would talk about. Although I do actually agree with a lot of the things she was talking about. I certainly love the fact, and you've heard me say this for a long time, not necessarily on the show, but being present. First and foremost, outside of all this sexual things she was talking about, which is important for that part too, but being present rings so true to me just in life. I think that really works well. And I think, and candidly, like it was great. She was talking about, the relationship side of things and being one with somebody. I think that that's an amazing feeling, and it's a rare feeling, but it is something when you are present that you could, get to that point. I do have one quick question about this though, and I couldn't tell when
Go
she was
ahead.
talking about this. I gotta like, so does she, that first part of her practice she was talking about and the triangular piece of it, so does
Okay.
she actually bring somebody in and watch them
Have you
have
watched? I'll
sex?
answer this because if you watch on the site, if you look at her site again, AnandaIntegrativeHealing.com, it explains all of this. Did you watch the Showtime show Masters of Sex with Michael Sheen and Lily?
I think I did actually.
So
I
Masters
know
and
I
Johnson.
usually don't watch a lot of things, but
Well, Masters and Johnson, they were essentially like the founders of this type of discipline, of this type of therapy. And if you watch the show, yeah, that's what you do. It's you have surrogates, you have intimacy sort of coordinators who teach you how to feel comfortable in your body. I don't know how far that gets in her practice in particular. The show, I think, is, pardon the pun, a little tittillating because it's television, but I don't know exactly how far, but I do know that there is a lot of physical touch because physical touch is very important. And if you
right.
think about it from the standpoint of helping people and not, trying to get your rocks off, so to speak, I mean, there's certain value to it. And again, I wasn't joking at the beginning of that, Scott. Like the first week we started talking, maybe the first day that we even talked, I said, I don't think I should date you. I think I should hire you. And she's like, well, I wouldn't be your surrogate because I'm running the business, but there are people who work for me who I think would be great with you. And then we continued that conversation. We ended up becoming more of a friendship than anything, but it was a serious thing. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah, there was a point, like, what was really interesting about this interview that we just, that you just went through. There was certainly a point where, and you cleared it up by the end, that I was like, yeah, they definitely went out and like hooked up. And I was very excited for you in that sense. And I was like really looking forward to hearing about the experience. And then at the end, you're like, we've never been in the same room together. I was like, I was like sort of like a little bit of a letdown, but good for you, bud. Good for you. You don't need to necessarily
No, she's great.
like do whatever you need to with everybody. And she's awesome. And I look forward to having her, involved in the podcast and even the site, more as we move forward.
I will say
awesome.
this, and I think she would agree. Next time she comes on, you can ask her because I think you'll be in there with us next time. I think COVID has precluded that from taking place. She has a relative who is not of great health and has been a little nervous about being around people who she's not normally inside her bubble. And I have been around, so to speak. So I think that was, we were supposed to hang out like once or twice throughout these last couple of months, and it just didn't work out because of that. And, you know, I respect that tremendously. I never want to be the reason.
Don't screw it up, dude. She's great on the show. She's
Oh no, yeah,
site,
no,
so
no,
don't screw it up, please. Like stay away from her.
What I will screw up is the date I went on the other day. I shouldn't say will. That's future tense. There will not be another date. So I did screw this up. Not even me. I think the thing I screwed up was that I didn't do, as we've talked about, Scott, a pre-call or some sort of conversation. I will say I wrote this down so I didn't forget to talk about this. I don't know, for people who are watching, can you see that? Is that it says worst,
I can read it. It says worst date ever.
And then it's a little picture of me with the X's over my eyes and my tongue sticking out because I felt like I died during this. And I say that flippantly. I usually am pretty serious about the whole dying thing, but this was the worst date ever. I matched with a woman who a month ago I tried to match with online, sent what I thought was a hilarious little, introduction, nothing. Turns out, not a lie, she actually accidentally deleted her account on Hinge. She came back on, she matched with me. So I was very excited. This woman's gorgeous, very excited. She's local. Those are two things that I look for. Somebody who's nearby and attractive. I'm not shallow. I'm not too shallow to say that. Maybe I am too shallow. That's why I'm saying
you're extremely shallow, but that's okay.
We text back and forth the entire night prior. And it turns out I grew up and went to school with her cousin. And I happened to have my 8th grade yearbook, don't ask why, in my apartment. And so I grabbed it, and her cousin is on like 10 pages. So I was taking pictures of the book and sending them to her all night. It was great. It like totally broke the ice. We got along super great. She loved it. Then we tried to figure out, I was like, hey, you want to hang out tomorrow? And she's like, yeah, sure. Couldn't figure out where to go because we both live in the same town and didn't want to run into our either neighbors or people. I don't care if my ex knows that I'm dating, but I don't want to make her uncomfortable if her friends see me out with a woman. Like, it's just not necessary. So I try to go to places that I know they won't go. People, who live in my own neighborhood won't be. So it took us a while. We finally figure out a place. I can walk to the place, and I walk up. I'm on the phone with you.
Is that what happened, by the way? Yeah, you were on the phone with me. I didn't know you were walking to the place, and then you hung up on me because you're like, I gotta go, and you just hung up on me. So, okay, good for you. Keep going.
Yeah, no, I walked to the bar for 2 reasons. 1, in case I have too much to drink, I don't want to drive.
Yeah.
2, if you walk there and it goes well, then you're definitely getting a ride home. So I almost screwed that up the first time I did it, but yeah, she'll always offer you a ride home. And then there's an opportunity for like a car goodnight kiss or, hey, do you want to come up? And it's a lot easier than like, it was nice meeting you. I'm going to go to my car. You go to yours. Like, I need either a ride or I'm going to walk. Well, this wasn't a date. This was a job interview. This was a question. I answered it. She cut me off to ask the next question. I was trying to explain. I have a pretty complicated situation with my kids. She said, do you have 2 boys? I said, no. Do you have a boy and a girl? I said, no. We'll get to that at another time. But there's, if a 10-year-old can grasp the idea of gender, why can't a 42-year-old woman? Like, why do you have to ask 3 times? So you have 2 sons? No. Well, like, just understand that you're an adult. Like, what, how hard is this? And that's when the flag came up, and I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare. But it was like, do your parents live nearby? She had like a checklist of questions to ask me as like a husband job interview.
How long has she been divorced?
She has been divorced as long as you, 8 years.
Yeah,
she was in a 2-year relationship that ended not that long ago. January, I believe.
Dude, I mean, I'm sorry that you didn't. You usually are pretty good at pre-qualifying people, and you admitted that you didn't pre-qualify her enough. You are not. Let me repeat: do not date women who have been divorced as long as me. A, B. Don't because you're at a different point in your life. You won't match well with them. You'll end like this. B, don't date women who have come out of a long relationship either. Like,
there's
just not
none left.
No, that's bullcrap. I mean, by the way, I'm saying a long relationship outside of their marriage.
I know
You
what you
want to
mean.
date as many women outside of who are just getting outside their marriage as possible because they want the same stuff that you want. That's cool. Women who have been divorced for 8 years, they're absolutely looking for a partner for their future.
Hold,
And that's
hold.
why she had a checklist.
That's fine. Uh, so I'm trying to be polite about it. You look, you're in the New York area. I'm in the Philly area. You grew up down here. Neither of us, I would say, have the traditional Philadelphia accent. I
Correct.
am immersed in that world, and I come to find that the worse the accent, the less I'm not putting a judgment on the people, the less I connect with them. Let's put it that way. They're fine humans. They're just not my whatever wavelengths are in my brain are not the same wavelengths.
Did she
And
ask for a glass of water?
right.
That's my favorite. It's my favorite Phillyism that they want a glass of water. I don't know
Yeah.
what water really is, but they want some water.
Yeah. That's
I call it
pretty
water.
much, I think people get that. That's pretty much what it was. And as soon as I got off the phone with you, I was like, oh my God, this is South Jersey. Oh no, this is going to be a disaster. Why didn't I have a phone conversation first? Why didn't I hear this? And I knew from the jump that it was going to be I was so excited to meet this woman. We had a connection. We were texting a lot. I mean, I was hoping to match with her. So it was like anxious to actually meet her, and it all fell apart. She had a club soda or maybe a sparkling water. I forget. And I had a drink. Sorry. I had a drink and she's like, yeah, maybe I'll get one. That's all we had. The waitress came over like 6 times and she was like, no, I'm good. I was like, I'm good. I literally just left a $20 bill for like a drink and a water because I felt so terrible that we just had the worst date ever. And this waitress had to like witness this. It was the cheapest date ever, but it was still terrible.
By the way, the positive, there's a lot of positives that have come out of this as far as I can see. One
Yes.
is if you're gonna have a bad date, make it a cheap date.
True.
Right? Right? If you're gonna have a bad one, make it a
yes.
cheap date. Don't waste a ton of money on dinner and everything else with someone who you know is not gonna be someone that you're gonna want to spend time with.
Good advice.
B is, you know what, Dan? And I've done this over the years, and I had to learn this, is that sometimes people on their profiles, especially, and if you don't qualify them, which is very surprising you didn't qualify her better, but that's okay. If you don't qualify them prior to meeting them, which I always used to do it as a phone conversation, was the minimum we needed to have because I needed to hear how they talked, and because there's little idiosyncrasies of their accents and whatever it might be that might grind on you a little bit. I've been out on dates in the
So Scott, what you're
past.
saying, real quick, can I just cut you off? So what you're saying is I should have talked to her on the phone.
In the phone.
On the phone.
Yes.
I should have had a
The
phone call with her.
Yes.
I can't even do it.
Wow.
Like I'm not even good at it, and I live here.
No, but everyone would know if you've ever met somebody from like the Philly, South Jersey area. We around some really interesting accents, just like a lot of areas of the country that I'm sure all of you are relating to as you're listening to this. So you're thinking about those grinding
Scott, what's
accents.
weird is I can do every other accent in the country except South Jersey.
Yeah, because you have a little bit of South Jersey in you too, buddy. It just doesn't come out that
Dare
much.
you?
I know, right? You have been.
All right,
there
I want
for
to
your
stop
entire
talking
life.
about this and end the show. So say your last point so we can play some music and get the hell out of here.
No, so all I was saying is that it's okay. You can actually just be honest with people. She was clearly looking for something. She had the checklist. You can stop it after the first sparkling water and just say, you know what? You're looking for something that I'm not. It was great to meet you, and I'm gonna let you go and have a good night. And I've done that before with people. And although it's painful in the moment, it actually is the best thing you can do. Not kill the entire night. Go back, hang out with some friends, do some other things, and that's what you need to do. I know you called me. You texted me afterwards, and you said what you just put on the screen, which is worst date ever, and that's fine. And you did end it pretty fast. But there's nothing wrong for everyone that's listening. If you're gonna go out on a bad date, make it inexpensive and cut your losses.
No, and we did that. I pretty much said there was like it was the night of the debate, and I said, do you want to watch the debate? And she's like, yeah, I'm interested in it. I said, okay, here's the deal. We're meeting at 7. The debate is at 9. By 8:45, if we're not hitting it off, let's just cut our losses and leave so we can get back and home in time for the debate. If we are hitting it off, you are welcome to come and watch it with me. No strings attached, nothing. I'm not presuming anything, but you're allowed. I would love you to come over and and watch the debate with me. And she was like, awesome. This is great. I totally thought she was coming to watch the debate with me when I made that deal.
Right.
8:30 we were out. By 8:30. Yesterday, though, I did send a text. Hi, it was great meeting you last night. I think you're so nice and gorgeous, but it felt pretty evident last night wasn't a match. It felt like a job interview more than a date. We're obviously looking for different things, but we are practically neighbors and we both love coffee. So if you ever wanted to go get coffee and BS without the pressure of it being a date, LMK, smiley face. She wrote back shortly thereafter, hey, yes, felt like an interview for sure. Maybe one day we can get coffee. I'll keep you posted. I'm never going to hear from her again, and I'm fine with that. Why did she say it felt like a job interview? I wasn't interviewing her.
I mean, it just was, I don't know. You know what? You just move on.
I'll tell you right now, we were not talking about sex on that one at all, Scott. There was no sex talk on that one. Which again is fine, and as we've discussed, Scott, doesn't always have to be like that, right?
It should not always be that way. It makes the special ones less special.
Sometimes the swiftest ending is the happiest ending of all. I just fortune cookied your ass. What do you have to say to end this thing?
Kids first.